Welcome to Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willies, your host. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, Harris County. Good morning to the great state of Texas. Good morning to the great country of the United States of America. Good morning to the entire nooks and crannies around Texas and Louisiana, where our 100,000 watts transmitter permeates the signal to Northeast Texas, Southeast Texas, Northwest Louisiana, Southwest Louisiana. Welcome to everybody and good morning throughout the world. This is Politics Done Right. Before we get started with the show, before we go ahead and tell you what the show is about, we like to pass it on to the people who keep these nuts and bolts going, the tin cans and strings going, that 100,000 watt transmitter doing its thing. Welcome aboard to the geniuses in the studio, Howard and Jack.
Well, those are the two nuts you're talking about, right?
That's a good one, Howard. I got to tell you, that was a good one. I like that.
Well, the tin cans and string are holding up so far. We're still looking at why the Arnie Arneson is cutting out. We don't understand that, but we have a crack team on it, which does not include me. Jack, what you got for us this morning? You got some wisdom for us?
Yeah, good morning, Egberto. How are you?
Good morning, Jack. Great. Can hear your voice.
All right.
The day has started right.
All right. Okay, this is about that $20 minimum wage. For fast food workers in California, bravo, fast food unions. They also point out the fact that fast food companies can, they won't have to raise prices or cut hours to do this, although they probably will. This demonstrates the power of collective bargaining. Every worker should join a union and protect their rights as a worker. Now, if we could just get them to serve hot burgers.
I know, right? In other words,
there is that.
We don't want it staying on the burner and just getting cold, right, Jack?
Yeah, they don't sweat the cheese no more. They put it through. They put the patties between two slices of cold cheese, and it makes the burger cold.
Well, that's got to be McDonald's. They do that stuff.
Oh, I wouldn't eat there for anything.
Let's not do that because they could become a sponsor one day. Yeah. All right. Now we're going to turn it back over to you.
Hey, wait. I'm just looking at some numbers as who the Final Four is in the women's game. I don't follow it much, but I didn't realize. Are we saying that LSU lost yesterday?
I don't keep up with that. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I'm sure the vast and unpaid research department out there at 713-526-573 at extension 2 will call and tell us, because that's what the vast and unpaid research department does.
Yeah, it's interesting because I see that they said March Madness Women's Final Four, UConn versus Iowa and NC State versus South Carolina. That is interesting. Anyhow, that should be interesting. But anyhow, going into the subject today, the title of the show today is Maryland Governor Wes Moore didn't take the bait. We're better off today, and $20 minimum wage hoopla in California. And of course, I also want, before I get into any of those topics, I want to touch on something because I woke up this morning and started to peruse some of the rags that I read in the mornings, and there's this thing that came out, that tickled my fancy on Daily Kos. It was written by Horst D. Wormer. Good morning, Lizard Queen on the chat, as well as good morning, Alistair Waters on the chat. Great to have you here on the system early this morning. But anyhow, so when I saw, and Eric Hayes as well. Good morning, Eric. How are you doing this morning? When I saw that the story about Truth Central, I started thinking, wow, that is what we talked about a few weeks ago when DJT, which is a symbol for Truth Central, when it was going to be going public. It just smelled like a scam. Remember, we spoke about Reddit making $800 million plus. They're losing a little bit of money, but they're a real company that brought in $800 million. And that company was valuated at around, I think, $7 to $8 billion, just like Truth Central, right? Which brought in, listen, folks, Reddit brought in $800 million plus. The Truth Central under $5 million. And last quarter, it only brought in 700 and something $1,000. Why am I telling you this? Because this article now kind of points out something that we've been talking about for some time. This is nothing more than Truth Social, not Truth Central. I keep calling it Truth Central. I even wrote an article where I call it Truth Central instead of Truth Social. Thank you for correcting me there, Howard. I got the same correction. I don't know why Truth Central is in the head. It's Truth Social. Thank you, brother. But so it turns out that this article nails it. It says, "What Folks" by Horst de Wurmer at dailycoast.com. It says, "What folks are missing about Truth Social, it's a money laundering operation. Like many Cossacks, I've been watching the stock market gyrations around Trump's anti-social media concern, Truth Social, and I think there's an angle that everyone's missed so far. We didn't, but most people did. Truth Social was from the very beginning intended as a conduit for processing foreign emoluments and other bribes." Now, that part I didn't think about, and that is a way foreigners can actually give Trump money by when he sells his stock, making sure that it's not a pump and dump. There's a buyer at the other end, so the price can stay at a point where Trump can actually collect a good amount of money from it. So while a lot of us are saying, oh, the price of the stock is going to crater like it cratered yesterday by 20%, that's nothing, because the way Trump sees it, when Saudi Arabia needs to get some money into him, they just need to prop the price of the stock up, and he goes out there and sells 6 months, and then they go ahead and prop it up. It's a laundering mechanism. So I want you to read that article. It's a Daily Kos called "What Folks Are Missing About Truth Social." It's a money laundering operation. It's a legal way that people, foreigners and otherwise, can get money to Trump from him just selling his stock in this false company that he created that produces nothing. But I brought that up not to just read the article, to point out how the definition of capitalism induces this type of fraudulent behavior. Yes, there are good companies out there. There are good companies that say, you know what? I have a company. I made a lot of money with this company. What I want to do now is I want to take out some of my money out of this company. So what I do is I create stocks and I sell pieces of the company in the form of stocks, but that the price of that stock should be commensurate with the value of that company. Well, there are other things that they put into there, like goodwill and what the future gains of the company would be and all of that. And they like to do some calculations to price that into the stock. I am never into that, right? I think the true value of a stock should be, or rather, I think the value of the stock should be what the hardware assets are of that stock minus, and the value, the potential income of that stock should be realized as dividends. We don't need any magical calculations to do this. But again, I'm not a capitalist, so therefore I don't believe in all these machinations that actually ultimately leaves a few people holding the bag. Because I want to remind you with something about stock. For somebody to win in the stock market, it also means somebody has to lose. But in a real economy, nobody ever has to lose. Why? Because in a real economy, exchanges values. The only reason for a real economy is to exchange what you have to offer for somebody who has something of similar value. And we create financial instruments, money, so that if I want to sell flour and you want to sell peanuts, you and I can't trade. But if I can sell my peanuts for a cent, for some instrument that I can exchange for anything, I can sell my peanuts for money. I can sell my flour, or he can sell his peanuts for money. I can sell my flour for money, and then I can take that money and go ahead and buy meat, right? He didn't need flour, he needed something else, so he still was able to trade with me using money. That's the real reason for creating financial instruments, right? So that we can exchange our values. Our values are the products that we make, the labor that we create, all these things. We have an exchanging mechanism called money, some financial instrument, so that we can create a way of exchanging these things without me having to have the particular product or service that everyone needs. And that way I can buy meat, peanuts, plantain, potatoes, and all that kind of stuff with that central entity called money. Now, everything else in our economic system is to create winners and losers, and mostly, again, from people who do nothing to produce anything of value or to create a service of value. So we have a whole banking institution out there that is based solely on making monies off of the backs of others. I know we don't learn it like that in school, right? We don't learn this kind of stuff in school because we have a vested interest in believing we need the banking sector. By the way, a real banking sector is that central exchange that does have a lot of value because it's the abstracting layer, the things that allow me to convert flour into meat, or convert flour into peanuts, or convert flour into all the different things that I need. And having a banker provide that service, that is also a service. But when you reach to the point where you're selling stocks and exchanging stocks and all of that, there's an entire market out there that produces nothing, but it's just a legalized form of gambling. And, any broker, any capitalist, anyone, please feel free to call and refute what I'm saying, and we can have a civil conversation about that. But again, when Bernie Sanders says Wall Street's basic tenet is fraud, the business model, actually his words were, the business model of Wall Street is fraud. I love that he said that. I wish he had elaborated a bit more because, again, he has a lot more weight behind him that he can point out what I just said about money, exchange, etc., and how the basic economic system is built on fraud. Now, I can tie that directly into what Brother Jack has brought up as a subject, and it's the subject of our discussion here, which is the minimum wage. And thank you. Jack is absolutely right. Every single worker, whether you are an engineer, a lawyer, a doctor, a street sweeper, a garbage collector. First of all of you have more value than the stockbroker, but just saying, anybody who works for somebody else, any group who works for this class that we talk about, it is imperative that you are in a union because you need your collective voices to work against the collective power of the others. What am I talking about? Why? These private companies or corporations like to tell folks, you don't need to be in a union, or they try to convince you that unions are not good. But yet they have their own unions. Their unions are comprised of these trade groups that then hire, they combine the composite power of several companies. You may have all the companies that buy beets to make sugar. Many companies buy beets to make sugar from the farmer, and they have their sugar consortium, and they work together to get somebody to go lobby Congress so that Congress passes laws that benefits them, many times at the detriment of the worker, the farmer, the candlestick maker. So they have their unions. They just don't call them unions, but they get together collectively to unite their power, their monies, to lobby Congress to do certain things, right? But they don't want the people who work to be able to lobby the corporations so that they're paid accordingly. And the question is, why? Because again, it's a skewed market. Look, every worker in this country, every single worker has value and has agency. They're stakeholders in every business. That McDonald's owner, yesterday there was a report on MSNBC. Actually, it wasn't on MSNBC, it was on ABC, where they interviewed this family who owned 21 McDonald's in LA. And they weren't very hard against the $20 minimum wage, but they immediately started talking about passing along the bill to the consumer, which, look, technically speaking, that is okay, right? Here's the funny thing about it. Paying the workers $20 an hour does not increase your price substantially, but it increases the economic activity a whole bunch. So you always have to wonder, why is it that they are always they want so much to hold back this worker? And you have to start thinking it's mostly about control. You don't want to have too much people too happy and independent, because what they earn from that is freedom. A well-paid employee doesn't have to spend all their money. They can save some. And when they decide that their work environment is not what they want to be, because they've saved, they can do one of many things. They can create their own company, or they can they can just quit, wait a while, move on. So remember, one of the reasons we don't want a completely very well paid group of folk, because it gives people too much independence. And the last thing we want are independent workers, because independent workers mean that they have power. And that is the one thing we don't want in the country. So in California, $20 an hour is what the McDonald's employee is going to make. And you know what? I think well deserved. Have you ever tried standing on your feet for 8 hours? Have you ever done that? Now, Eric says, Egberto, have you ever owned a small business with employees to know what will happen? Actually, I own a small business. I've owned many small businesses. And the reasons I haven't had employees is because I value employees too much. And I would not have been able to, given how our system works, I would have wanted to pay employees their health care, their child care, and all of that. And I said, if I can't do that, I'll do the work myself. And if you are asking somebody to work for you, but you live a good life, you have a good house, and you are asking somebody else to come in and work for you, where you're not paying them enough so that they can pay for child care, you're not paying them enough so that they can have an existence, you don't have a business worthy of employees. You have a hobby. All right? Employees in our basic economy should earn a living wage. And a living wage means you can pay your bills and you can take care of your family. That's what earning a living wage means. And if you are hiring somebody at a substandard rate where they can't do those things, that means you are hiring a slave. That means you're hiring a slave. Eric says, just starting a business, you don't have nice things till the business provides it. Yeah, but when you have nice things after your business provided, you better not have those nice things because you paid your employee a wage that was not a living wage. You see, if you do that, you're nothing more than a slave master. So when I hear small businesses complain about, if I have to pay my workers more, it's going to cost my business. And you know, a lot of these business people, they live in mansions, have a small business, they live in a big house, but they want the people who work for them, the people who are making the value in their business, to go get a cheap apartment, not able to afford childcare and all those things, while they work for that person who can do all of that. Again, it's about equity, people. It's about equity. So if you have a small business and you want employees, there should be in having employees. All right? You only have employees if you can afford to have employees. In my case, in the businesses that I have and the lifestyle I wanted to live, I used services. So again, I wrote software. I didn't need to have employees to write my software. I wrote the books for my software. I could write my books, and I could go to a company that specializes in creating the books for the software. Those when you had actual physical manuals for your book, and some of them 200-300 pages long. You write the books. I had services to do that. I had services that did some of my money transactions. I paid for services that other companies provided, that they provided to a whole lot of other small businesses. So there are ways of making small businesses work as you pay a living wage. If you have a small restaurant, if your restaurant is only making $1,500 a day, and you want somebody to come in and work 8 hours, but because you know your survival depends on, let's say, $500 a day, and you want 3 employees, no, what it means, if that is what your company makes, you stay your butt in that building and not try to get somebody to work on the cheap for you. Come on, folks. It is about value. It's about honesty. It's about doing the right thing. Harry, come on in.
Egberto, you just took the words right out of my mouth. I just love it when you talk like that. And I'll always remember Egberto Willis as a fair man that came from Panama and made a life for himself here, and was about doing the right thing and treating people fairly. And you're saying, what you're doing is you're saying to people out there who exploit people to stop doing that. Treat workers fairly. And kudos to McDonald's. I hope they keep raising the minimum wage so there are livable wages and you're not being treated like a slave. And before Arnie Arneson was cut off, I heard her talking about, I have to go back and listen to the archives, but she was talking about a business where they were doing that 90% of the money went to the shareholders. And Egberto, that's what you're always talking about, how the shareholders create nothing, they invest in the company, and the workers a lot of times get screwed. Well, Egberto, you're just a good, fair man, and that's why I always pray for you, and I keep praying for your family, because I know you got a lot on your plate, and I just hope your wife continues to get better, and I just hope your daughter actually doesn't have any more health issues with strokes or anything. You're just a good, fair man, and you love telling the truth.
I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate that. You know what? We all want to be fair, and let me just say something in that regards, Harry, because this is what I noticed. We can only live what we've learned. And one of the reasons I've learned, and notice I said I've learned, and the reason I say I've learned is because, like anybody else, we were programmed under these systems, right? We were, and we ship all of this all over we ship this economic system and this way of thinking, of the way we value other people. We ship this way of thinking. We are the United States all over the world. So it takes us a little bit of learning from others. I can tell you some of my mentors are like folks like Richard Wolff. You listen to Richard Wolff's message, that economist Richard Wolff, you really understand.
Kudos to him too.
Yes, you understand how things really work. I talk to him all the time,
Yeah.
right? I call him up sometimes, and I
That's right.
remember when he came out with a series called "Capitalism Hit the Fan." That was my turn on
Yeah.
to how things work, and it was like, wow, how is it I didn't? All of this information was right in front of you, and not till he was able to distill it the way he did was like, oh, the bell went off. And it was a change in the thought process. It was a change completely in the way we do things. But thank you, Harry, for calling in, my brother.
Exactly.
Have a wonderful day, man.
You talk the
Thank you,
same
brother.
way. You talk the same. Yeah.
Go ahead. Oh, all right. Anyway, folks. So yeah, it is important. Again, remember what I said. We learned. It is. Let me give an example. You see, Trump right now. I always talk about Trump releasing a scab, tearing the scab off of a lot of stuff in this country, right? But again, the only reason there was a scab to remove is that there is so much that we've learned from the inception of this country that we have to unlearn if we really want to be our brother's keeper, if we really want to be fair with others. There's so much that we have to unlearn. Eric says, do rich people go to McDonald's to eat or middle and poor people? Raising prices hurt who? Again, listen to what you're talking about. And Eric, I want to show you how, and I know you personally, and I know you're a good person, right? But I want to show you how our thinking, how we are programmed to think incorrectly. Your stuff is, do rich people go to McDonald's? Actually, yeah, they do go to McDonald's. Some people are going to call me out for this, but I'll be honest with you. McDonald's makes, in my opinion, maybe not real food, but dang, it's good tasting food. And I like McDonald's, and a lot of people like McDonald's, rich and poor. It doesn't matter. Your taste palette doesn't have to be, whatever. But when you say, do rich people go to McDonald's to eat or middle and poor people? All people go to McDonald's and eat. And McDonald's ain't cheap anyway. But anyhow, raising prices hurt who? Raising prices hurt the poor and the middle class. But the next question, here's what you're saying. You don't want to give workers a wage increase because it will raise prices a tiny bit, right? And the reality is prices don't have to raise. We just have to not give the people who don't do any work a little bit less money, the shareholders. We can pay for this bill, pay the workers a little bit more by giving the rich people that you were talking about a little bit less. But here it is, Eric. You want the worker to keep the prices low for the average American citizen. Where is it? And you claim to be concerned about the middle and the poor. Well, it seemed to me like who you're concerned about is the rich, because you're saying if you give the worker a little bit more money, instead of taking that money out of dividends that go to the people who don't do any work at all, they just park their money so that others work for them. You are saying it is okay to keep their dividends exactly the way it is right now. Keep making the same amount of money and simply suck it to the middle and poor people. Your statement there, Mr. Hayes, is actually saying that you as a middle class person is willing to harm poor and middle class persons to keep the people who do no work funded at the same level, if not higher. And let me tell you why I say higher. The inflation rate was purported to be caused by supply chain issues, by shortages, etc. I always told you that was a crock, and I proved that. But there it is. Even based on these issues, the wealthy made a lot of money from inflation, why we call it the corporate greed index. And who's defending them? Poor people, middle class people, defending the wealthy. That is called Stockholm Syndrome. You are supporting the ones that harm you. You are supporting the ones that are harming you. Stockholm syndrome. And that's what we have collectively. Those people who continues to say raising wages is going to harm us, as opposed to say raise wages and make sure the shareholders who are simply putting their money in as investment for others to work. Right? Think about it. When I buy a piece of stock, I am buying a piece of a company with the expectation that those people in the company, I will get a piece of their action. You know, it's it's the correct way of thinking. It's the truthful way of thinking. And we need more people to think that way. We must change the paradigm. If we are ever to have an equitable society, if we are ever to have a society that believes in the value of work and the value of human beings, we have to change what we've been believing from it doesn't matter if the company is independently owned or not. If you cannot afford to pay a living wage, you don't have a company, you have a hobby. You have a hobby. Period. All right, let's go to Patrick. Good morning, Patrick. And folks, give us a call before it gets too late. 713-526-5738. Again, that is 713-526-5738. Good morning, Patrick. How are you doing this morning, sir?
Doing great. Good morning. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Talk to me, my brother.
I wanted to point out that about 20 years ago, the poverty line was right around $24,000 or $25,000, and 20 years ago, the cost of living has gone up 1.78% in that 20 years. And so, if we scale that $20, that puts them right at what the poverty line was 20 years ago as far as purchasing power.
You know, guess what? Patrick, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to tell you how genius it is for what you just said. Because let me tell you what the implications of what you just said. You said because of the cost of living increase over time, that the correct minimum wage right now should be $20. And it hasn't been $20. In fact, in some places, it's $7.25. What you're saying is that corporate America, business people have been robbing the worker on the order of $13 an hour for the last several years. That is what you've just said. Continue, my brother.
For almost 2 decades. And then also, if you scale the cost of living for when the Fight for 15 started, it would be over $20 an hour now. So that means that the decades-long fight for the Fight for 15 still hasn't been won. And you have people complaining that people are trying to get a wage where they can barely raise a family.
Brother, thank you.
Capitalism is a failure.
Look, but I have been talking about, and Richard Wolff explains this. Let me tell you, I came up with this messaging form, and I passed it by Dr. Wolff, and I said, "Hey, this is how I see it." And he's like, "Brother, you nailed it." And the thing about it, in fact, he said some of his students listen to us now. But here's the thing. It is important for us to start seeing it exactly through your eyes, Patrick, because what happens is there are business schools and there are all these forces out there trying to have you think the way my brother Eric Hayes is thinking here. They don't realize the hidden thievery that occurs. Because when you just talk about we're at $7.25 and the rate should be $20-something. That means that somebody got that increase, and that wasn't the worker. That means it has to be the shareholders or the person who owns the company. That was legalized hidden theft. Anything else, Patrick, before I go to Terrence?
The last thing I'd like to say is that a company is actually its employees. Without its employees, it can't produce. And so if you can't take care of the very entity that creates a corporation, I agree that it shouldn't be running.
There you go. There you go. It's a hobby. And like I said, I ran a company, but I wanted to do right by employees, so I just did the damn work myself. It meant long hours, but until I could have gotten somebody, I used the other best next resource. Terrence, come on in, my brother.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Hello. Well, I think McDonald's sucks.
Okay.
One reason is this coist business. I'd rather deal with a live human being than some coist. That's it.
Okay, look, hey, to each his own, right?
What's that?
No, I said to each his own, right? I mean, I'm going to tell you something before you continue, Terrence. The other day, we were driving down Kingwood Drive, and I just stopped at a McDonald's, and I got their little ice cream, and I got their little, I don't remember what kind of a burger it was, and I bit into it, and I turned around at my daughter, and I said, this stuff actually tastes good. These guys know how to engineer food. It may not be really good food for you, but the engineering of the food is pretty darn good. Anyway, just my taste bud says that. Yours may be different. Anyway, continue, Terrence. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, I don't care for the coist because I'd rather deal with a real human being. And the use of these coists, they use those coists to minimize their personnel so they don't have to pay people. All right, well, that's all I got to say.
Okay, Terrence, don't leave yet because I want to expand on something you said. Don't leave yet. Let me tell you, you noticed you're talking about the kiosco that where you order through a machine for your food, right?
Right, exactly.
Now, let me tell you, let me just say this between you and me. I have nothing against those things. And let me explain what I mean by that. I want robots all over America. I want them to reduce the amount of people we need to have employed. Hear me out, Terrence. But here's what I want. I want, instead of us working a 40-hour week, we call ourselves people who believe in families and believe in family values. We have a lot of latchkey kids. We have a lot of kids that come home to no supervision, right? Hey, suppose most McDonald's could work, instead of having 10 people, could work with 4 people. I would be for that. But here's the kicker, my brother. What I do want is a 20-hour work week at the same amount of money that you would have made working 40 hours a week. Because now we have robots that all of us created. Guess what, Terrence? Did you know that you are partially responsible for how robots work? Because a lot of your intellect as well went into that robot. So I don't have a problem with the machines. I have a problem with how we treat human beings, right? And I just want, as we replace human beings with robots, we have more time to spend with our families because we claim to believe in families. But that's all I wanted to add it to that, Terrence. So I read you and I know where you're coming from. Thank you so kindly for calling, my brother.
Well, you're welcome.
All right. Let's go to Lynette. Come on in, Lynette. How are you doing this morning, my sister?
I'm great. Thank you all again for your service. I'm just going to make this quick as usual. Just a couple of things. Thank you for bringing up this topic. One thing I wanted to point out, a lot of people, when they talk about not paying a livable wage, well, not a lot of people, I'm sorry, I'm not going to make that general, but I've heard like some companies that don't want to pay people more. They'll say, well, we'll always have the poor with us. They try to be spiritual, but it's like, why create more? That's not even fair. And so I just wanted to throw that out there so that people to stop using that. The poor will always be with us. They don't have to always be with us if we have equitable living wages. And that doesn't mean just paying bills, but it means paying people enough so they can afford to save as well for their future. Thank you so much again. And you all have a great day.
Thank you, Lynette, for those comments. And what Lynette said is just basic humanity, right? Right now, we should all look. I cherish work. Personally, I work long hours. I don't want folks working the long hours that I work. I work that because I choose to be in something that I have to do that, right? But I choose it. I love it. And as much as I work a lot, I love what I'm doing. But I can put these other hours in because of my particular situation. but we ought to have humanity in the way we work. I mean, there's a reason why our happiness index has fallen so dramatically. There's a reason why countries like Denmark and Finland have lower crime, have better happiness values, and that's because they understand one thing: humanity. I repeat the word humanity. They didn't get there overnight. They weren't always that way. They grew into that. And we also can grow into loving human beings and doing all the right things by human beings. And I see that Brother Donald is with us. So come on in, Donald. But folks, please give us calls about your thoughts. 713-526-5738. Again, that number is 713-526-5738. Before Donald comes in, I would need to respond to Eric Hayes. Lower population density and not even comparable to America. I love you, brother, but that's a nonsensical answer. All these things scale. And in fact, with more people, they scale better. That's a mathematical fact. It scales better with more people, with more arable land, which is what we have. America is a country of wealth and richness, not only from a point of view of an economic system, which we need to change, but from the amount of land and resources that we have. So that's a completely wrong answer. Come on in, Donald.
Hey, good morning, Egberto. How are you today?
I am fine, especially since I'm hearing the voices of wonderful people. Talk to me.
Okay. Did you ever listen to that thing I asked you to? It'll give you an idea of humanity. And, what happened to our public works departments, and why does people got to go get locked up and go to prison to learn a trade like electricians, plumbing, all this other stuff? And why are all these cities outsourcing all this to independent contractors using whatever immigrants to do work? And there's no retirement, there's no pension, there's no benefit. And when did we get to this model that we could take taxpayers' dollars to keep taxes down? We sacrifice the quality of living for the poor people. They don't have nothing to go into. So, of course, they're going to get in trouble. And that's what's wrong with our system.
Hey, before I answer that, what was the name of that thing that you told me that I must watch?
It's the Charlie Chaplin, the great dictator speech at the end. It's 7 minutes, and it's discussing a man that could take over the world, and he gives it back. And it's about humanity and how planes have made us faster. The world has come together. But this is almost 100 years old. But I want you to listen to it in a World War II mindset.
I'm tired of telling you that I'm going to do it and not doing it. It messes with my own credibility for myself. So I just put a big note on the computer.
I keep bringing it up, brother. You know.
Let me tell you, I just put it on my computer screen, brother.
Accountable.
Hey, I just put it on my computer screen. I wrote it down and put it standing up on the computer screen. I hope tomorrow I'll be able to say, "Hey, Donald, I listened to it. I followed what you asked me to do, Donald." Anyway, Donald, calls are coming in, so let me talk to you later.
He sounds just like you, but he looks different than you.
All right.
All right, man. Later.
Thank you, brother. All right, let's go to Ali. Ali, come on in.
¿Qué tal, señor?
¿Cómo estás, mi hermano? Habla conmigo, por favor.
Bien, bien. I just wanted to give you a quick McDonald's tangent.
Yes.
Buddy and I were at McDonald's downtown, packed McDonald's. Homeless lady comes in, asks for a glass of water. Employee denies her the water. Sorry, we can only give water to paying employees. That homeless lady, after a moment, brief pause, she comes back and says, "You ain't McDonald's, you the clown witch."
you know,
come back I've heard in my life.
It is, I tell you something that brings up to me, right? I watch people who, and it shows you what happens when you are, and I say this with respect because it covers myself at a time in my life as well. you don't have a slave. The type of slavery we have today no longer require chains because we've been so well trained. And I consider myself in my previous iteration, even when I worked for corporations, even as a business owner, I consider myself now that I used to be what I would call an antiseptic slave. And people are like, how can you dare say that given the history of the cruelty of... let me tell you something. We have learned over time. I mean, or rather, the system has taught us over time, right? That we no longer need to put physical chains on people. We just need to have mental chains on people. And mental chains are a lot more powerful and a lot more economical than physical chains, right? And that's where we are. And that poor woman that came back in, if you ever notice, you go to a McDonald's or you go to any one of a store where the front person is a low-paid employee, but that is the best defense that store will ever have, right? That they defend things in that store as if they have a stake in it. And that you know, the
free cup of water, right? Yeah.
Right. And again, they defend it like they have a stake in this, right? Look, a cup of water, the goodwill that creates, right? I mean, I know a lot of people say, well, people are going to flood in wanting cups of water. No, there are limits, right? But goodwill. It's much better, right? But these people with that small amount of power given them as the employee of that corporations that screwing them are then willing to protect it at all costs. If you take a look at some of the messages in my chat, they're concerned about, I mean, they claim concern for the poor and the middle class. So they don't want to pay the poor and the middle class more, but they didn't mention the shareholder who's getting paid on the backs of everybody else. Why not take out that extra money as Patrick mentioned earlier what the wage should be? That means what was not paid to those wage owners over the years have been paid to the stockholders, to the shareholders. Where is the payback from them? And that is where we have to stop the mental slavery that we live in. Thank you very much, Ali, for your call.
No problem. Have a good one. All right, thanks.
You too. All right, let's go to Augie. Come on in, Augie.
Good morning, you all.
Good morning, hermano.
There are rich folks not going to McDonald's. Well, Trump, he likes fast food. He likes those hamburgers and he likes the fried chicken.
Yeah.
But they don't like the employees getting all the benefits. I remember working in sales one time, and you make your goals and everybody's happy. But then the following year, because you made your goals, they kept raising them, and it makes it harder to make that goal. And then they keep on raising the goals. But who gets the benefit? It's not the worker; it's the management that gets the benefits. And the workers that I was around with, their doctors were telling them they got to change jobs because they're getting all stressed out. They're getting all kind of medical problems because of the pressure that they're being put on. Like you said, they're not chained with the physical chains, but there are other chains that they're being with, you know. And then I worked with this other department where this management guy thought, well, let's see what happens if we don't have a supervisor over them. And let the workers dole out the jobs and order supplies and write down the hours of the work for their employees. The productivity went up, morale went up, as long as, you know. Yeah, but people sort of don't realize that. And they don't
actually,
the work do.
Augie, I'm not going to be as nice as you are. I think they do realize that. The thing about it is, remember what I was saying earlier. I think that you don't want employees too happy or too well paid because they have a level of independence. And I think that's what they're running from, that level of independence. You know, it ties right into that thing of having full control. But Augie, got some other calls coming in, and I only have a few minutes. So thank you, my brother, for always being there and for calling in. You have a wonderful day, sir.
Well, thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Let's go to Brian. Come on in, Brian.
Yeah, I've been doing a little bit of research, and I still haven't found anything that the Palestinians have built as far as man-made structures that lasted longer than a couple hundred years.
Okay.
I think they're outcasts from other Arabic religions that nobody wants, and they're just a thorn in the side of the Israelis. And one other thing about the Muslim religion, Allah called himself God. Jesus called himself the Son of God. So it's kind of weird, huh?
Not really. Actually, I think you misunderstand things completely, my brother. First of all, Allah is God, right? Allah is what we call God. All right. In other words, take a look at read the religion. And when it comes to what Palestinians have done, what these ethnicities have done, I don't know. Look, let's put all of that aside. Let's put all of that aside. I just have two numbers for you. 1,200 dead Israelis by criminals, terrorists who kill them, and 33,000 dead Palestinians and destroyed infrastructure by the people who call themselves the good guys. By the people who say they believe in humanity, 33,000 people dead. By the terrorists who came from Gaza, 1,200 Israelis dead. All right. You can try to create any kind of story that you want, my dear brother Brian, but those are the numbers. The numbers says it all. There are 33,000 human beings dead in Gaza. There were 1,200 liberal Jews killed in Israel. Everybody that's listening to my voice, those are the numbers. You do whatever you want with them, but tell me which side is inhumane and which side is humane. Thank you, Brian. I got to go to Peter. Come on in, Peter. Peter, you're on.
Yes, I'm on. Thank you so much. Yeah, I just had a question for you. Thank you so much, Egberto. My question is related to the stocks you were talking about earlier. And the question is, do you think our representatives who
You're breaking up, Peter. I can't hear you.
Do you think that our representatives should be allowed to buy and sell stock?
No.
They're privy to the...
No. You don't even have to finish the question. The answer is no. I think when you decide to serve the public and you're going to get the perks, so you get a fairly good salary, plus you get good health care and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely not. If you are one of those people, and Nancy Pelosi is absolutely wrong. If you are going to be making laws that governs an economic system, etc., absolutely not. If you own stock, it should be thrown into escrow in some sort of a blind trust or whatever. But no, you should be out of the system that you're regulating at the time. And when you get out, you can actually get back in. But other than that, the answer is simple. No, Peter.
Thank you, sir. So the follow-up to that is the question for the listeners. So do you guys want a representative who's not too far from here, Dan Crenshaw, who, he doesn't have a high net worth coming in 5 years ago, but now he's multi-millionaire, and it's because of just that.
There you go, Peter. Got to go, Peter, to Patrick, but thank you for that, my brother. Come on in, Patrick.
Yeah, it's not my intention to offend anybody, but I'd like Brian to understand that anthropologists cannot back up any evidence for the Exodus. And if a million people left Egypt, you'd expect the Egyptians to have some sort of record of that, which they don't. So we can go back and forth between books and back and forth between civilizations and point out that, hey, it doesn't look like this ever existed. He needs to get his information from more than one source. And I think that he needs to work a little bit on his respect for other human beings. Have a good day.
Thank you very much, Patrick. And I think what Patrick just said is very important. Again, I just want people to be cognizant of what's going on here. Like I said, the asymmetry of 33,000 people dead versus 1,200, and somehow the person that is responsible for killing the 33,000 people, trying to claim moral superiority or somehow they're doing it for the sake of humanity. Folks, remember what I talked about: mental slavery. Mental slavery. An enslaved mind can only believe these things if your eyes are seeing something, if the destructions and catastrophe your eyes are seeing, and somehow you look at that through the lens and say, there's a reason for killing all those people because of reciprocity. I mean, as a human being, you get it. I'm going to pass this on to the studio. Come on in, studio.
Well, I was just going to address what Brian was saying. He says, and I interpret it this way, and this is my interpretation. It's like, well, what do the Palestinians do anyway? It doesn't matter. It's their land. They invited the cancer in after World War II, and it was a bad choice. They should have said, no, you can't come here, because look at what's going to happen in the future. You're going to take us over, and now you're killing all of us. So, Brian, it doesn't make any difference what Palestinians make or manufacture. It was their land. They can do anything they want to with it. So I want you to look at it that way. Do they deserve to be wiped out because they're not really productive? They don't produce any cars or buildings or anything? No, they don't. So there you go. That's my 2 cents. Jack, what you got?
Yes, I believe the Palestinians have a right to be human. Okay, they're human beings and should be treated as such. That's it.
Folks, I love you all, love the conversation, and I mean all of you, whether you agree, disagree, whatever. That's what conversation is all about. My name is don't go to politicsandright.com/newsletter. You have the rest of the show there. politicsandright.com/newsletter. All the other topics that we're going to discuss. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics and Right, and you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number 1, subscribe to our channel, and number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.